To remuneration?
Yes, and the final paper of the day.
No, we have a PX paper as well.
Oh, the final paper in the open part of the agenda is in fact the item number
17.
17,
Yeah.
which is the elected member remuneration. I have some additional recommendations that I want to put to the council, and they are that we actually there's just one other change that I want to make to number 16, which is noting the requirements of the remuneration authority, so that the first one, rather than starts with approves the distribution, put noting the requirements of the remuneration authority that we approve the full distribution of the governance remuneration pool, so that it starts off by stating the requirement that we have been put into, because it will help give context to what to my amendments, to what I also want to move.
You want that as
so
a single...
noting the requirements of the remuneration authority. Oh, okay, yeah, so make it a separate one. Note the requirements of the remuneration authority that the council approve the full distribution, the distribution of the full governance remuneration pool.
Full stop. And that's the item, the recommendation.
Yeah, then to...
Second one.
Agree to submit the following to the remuneration authority, so that we're just simply
Can I just have an extra word? I know it's required again, but I think it strengthens it, that the council is required.
That the council is required.
To approve.
Note the requirements of the remuneration authority that the council is required to approve.
That's it.
Yeah. The distribution of the full governance remuneration pool. So that's a statement of fact. We are required to do this. And then secondly, agree to submit the following to the remuneration authority, the following distribution. So just put distribution after following. Yep. And then 3 is advise the remuneration authority that the council does not support the population-based funding formula for setting community board remuneration, and B, does not support the requirement that council is required to determine their own remuneration by allocation of the governance remuneration pool. But I mean, we are not actually determining our own remuneration. Does not support the requirement that councillors are required to submit on their own remuneration, because we don't support that. This is a new model that has been imposed on us, and it is not something that we have agreed to. All right? Okay, so I will move that. Do I have a seconder for that? Sam McDonald? Very good. So is there any debate? Melanie?
So I'd be happy to support resolutions 16 and 18, but I can see they're being moved together. But I won't be supporting resolution 17, or I guess the whole lot together today, as I feel the distribution as a result of the remuneration authorities governance pool they've allocated is sending the wrong message to our community.
Thank you. Jake?
Yeah, so when I put my hand up to run for council, I did so because I wanted to represent the communities. I had done so on community board. I didn't do it to be in a position where I determine my own pay, and I think this process is inappropriate, and for that reason I'll be abstaining.
Thank you. Andrew?
Just some comments really relating to 18A. And whenever we talk about population-based funding for community boards, of course, the Community Board of Banks Peninsula comes to mind. And it would be difficult for me not to make some comment about this, given that this matter has come up again, and in fact it came up in the Community Board report that was presented to Council earlier as well. The population basis of the Community Board remuneration determination has resulted in a significant disparity for the Banks Peninsula Community Board when compared to the city boards, which is unfortunate because, of course, the population basis assumes that the work of a community board is driven by the number of people represented by that community board. You only need to take a look at Banks Peninsula, in fact other rural areas of the country, to see that the work of a community board is driven by the environment, which of course Banks Peninsula has got plenty of, infrastructure, which of course Banks Peninsula has got plenty of, and also the work of the Banks Peninsula Community Board is significantly driven by the distance that people need to drive to attend formal meetings and also to attend community meetings to be effective representatives. If I was to get in the car and drive to Akaroa, it would take me an hour and a half from here. If I was to drive to O'Kane's Bay, which I also do regularly, it would take me an hour and 3/4 and that same amount of time to get back. So there is a temptation to confuse the matter of community board remuneration with the matters that we'll consider probably next year in the representation review. And of course, 6 years ago and 12 years ago, the Banks Peninsula community told us loud and clear that they felt that Banks Peninsula should be considered an isolated community by the Local Government Commission, and the Local Government Commission agreed with that. It's important to reflect also on what happened in the most recent local body elections for Community Board. Despite the low level of pay, in 3 out of the 4 subdivisions there was a well-contested election. In one of the subdivisions there was not, and there's a by-election which will be taking place early next year. It's my hope and in fact expectation that a number of people will put themselves forward for that by-election in exactly the same way they did in Akaroa in 2013 when this same thing happened. So I think it's entirely appropriate that we communicate with the Remuneration Authority on this disparity because it does have potential to create unintended outcomes. If what we want is the best people standing to be the best representatives we can possibly get for communities that badly need that representation, I think it's important that that's reflected in the remuneration of community boards on Banks Peninsula and quite possibly other areas around the country like that.
Yanni?
Thank you. I'll keep it short and sweet, and thank you for putting the clock on for me, and I noticed it wasn't on for the Deputy Mayor, but that's okay. I won't take my full time. I'll give back some of the time I went over from the previous debate. Just to say, I don't support 17. I believe we're well paid, especially after the most recent vote. I don't think our ratepayers should be paying more towards our salaries when we're well remunerated as it is. Therefore, I won't be supporting 17.
Thank you. James?
Kia ora. Those 3 motions can be paraphrased into the fact, and I think it's important that our residents and ratepayers understand that we are forced into making this decision, and that's what that's effectively saying. We're forced into making this decision, so that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. Yeah. Look, I'll just close off the debate and say that I'm, you know, no one is happy about having this matter brought before the council. Nobody sitting around this council table, either now or in the past, asked for this model to be imposed on us. And we will, and I'm more than happy to again submit to the Remuneration Authority on the population-based funding formula. I think that when you have small community board areas that are attached to a metropolitan area, it is different. It is different from the very small councils that have very small community boards and not many delegations. This is quite a different situation, and I think that it should be taken into account. They are an isolated community. They have met that test under the local government the Local Government Commission's regime. But then to find that a perfectly good decision that's taken in one place is then effectively challenged by the remuneration that is then applied is simply not fair. So I'm very supportive of us, again, raising this with the Remuneration Authority. And, you know, in terms of the structure of how these decisions are made, I'm also going to raise it with the local government minister as well, because even though they won't have any direct influence over the Remuneration Authority, because its policy setting framework is completely independent of the government, but I think that we need to actually ask ourselves whether that decision making framework could in fact be adjusted for this purpose. So thank you very much, and I know that it's not agreeable to anyone, but it is, as James has so eloquently put, something that we're required to do. So I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. And so no is Yanni and Melanie, and abstention is Jake. Yep. All right. Thank you very much.